All right, 4.3, vertical and horizontal translations. We're going to start with vertical translation first. I'm going to make this so that you can graph it on that little paper I gave you for those of you that use that. I'm going to change this, do it 2. That way you'll be able to still graph it on that page. So let's change it to 2, and let's get rolling. So, a lot going on here, right? So we have the amplitude of 2, right? So what does that mean? That means we have a wave that's 4 units tall, right? And we're going up 4 to start. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And with that 4, at 0, what's happening to the sign? At 0, as you know, sine is 0, 0, so we're just going to start at 4. The 2x here represents what? So our period is going to be what? 2 pi over 2, which is pi, right? So one motion of that is going to go the length of pi, okay? So we'll call this pi. This is clearly not drawn to scale, but I want to make sure that you're able to see the movements of what's happening here. Also, halfway between is going to be pi over 2. And halfway between this, 0 and pi over 2, is going to be pi over 4. What's happening at pi over 4? Well, since you have an amplitude 2, it's going to go all the way up 2. And then halfway between pi is going to be 3 pi over 4, and it's going to go down to 2. And there we go. We've completed one cycle of this particular graph. Next, we got a horizontal translation, right? So whenever we add or subtract inside of our trig function, that's a horizontal translation, as opposed to the last problem where we added on the outside, so that's why we went up 4 units. In this case, we're going left and right because of what's inside here. Just like with other functions you've done in the past, that you've done in your previous classes, when it's minus right here, we're going to the right. If this was plus, you'd be going to the left. So let's draw. Sign once again. The starting point would be 0, 0, but we shifted over pi over 2, right? So 0, 0 is going to be at, the new 0, 0 is going to be at pi over 2 right there, right? Originally, pi over 2 was 1, right? So now it's shifted over 1 unit, so it's at pi. And then it went back down, originally at pi, but now it's at 3 pi over 2 because it's shifted to the right pi over 2. And then at 2 pi, it would go down to -1. And then at 5 pi over 2, we'll go back to 0. Just as a reference, and so you can kind of visualize the shift to the right pi over 2. I'm going to draw the original. The original was here. Went up to 1, down to pi, down to 3 pi over 2, then back down to 2 pi. All right, so let's say we have this function right here, sine of bx plus c. Whenever we have a value in front of our x and we have we're adding or subtracting something to that bx value, that changes some things a little bit. Now the period is still going to be 2 pi over b, right? But how far we horizontally shift, it's going to be whatever this c value is divided by b. Now in order to kind of have a more accurate shifts of how far we're actually going horizontally, one thing you can do is whenever you get this, whatever the b value is, factor it out, and then that's how we get the c over b, right? Because if we factor it out, we get that, right? C over b. So that's where it's not like something we just made up out of the blue, that negative c over b, right? So that's going to help us out a little bit. So we're going to do some examples with some more shifts, and then it'll give you a little, paint you a better picture of everything. So let's graph the following, right? So we have a lot going on here. We have an amplitude 2, period is going to be 2 pi over pi, which is equal to 2. Now, as far as like what's one cycle going to be, what we have to do in order to get what one cycle is, normally in cosine graph, it's going to be between 0 and 2 pi, right? So one way we kind of help us out ourselves out a little bit, put whatever's inside here in between 0 and 2 pi, and that'll help us tell us what one cycle would be. So if I subtract pi over 2 everywhere, and divide everything by pi, that's going to get us negative 1/2 is less than or equal to x. That's less than or equal to 3 over 2. Now what does that tell us? I'm going to graph it on the next page, but keep this in mind, right? Okay, that's going to be an important part along with all the other fun stuff right here. One thing to know that we are right with this, and you did your inequality correctly. What's the difference between 3 over 2 and negative 1/2? You subtract those, you get 2. Same thing as your period, which is good. So we did that right. It's looking good so far. Now with our graph, remember a couple things. We had an amplitude of 2. So the original cosine graph would start at 0,1, amplitude means 0,2. Now remember, where one cycle starts at, I'm going to move those up just to kind of make it a little bit more proportional. There we go. And then it's going to end at 3 pi over 2, so halfway between 1 and 2, and then halfway between negative 1/2 and 3 over 2 is 1/2. So it's going to sink all the way down to negative 2 down here. It'll hit 0 halfway between 1/2 and 3/2, which is at 1, and then at 0, 0. There you go, you drew one cycle. Appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in class.